You reach out your hand toward a wild animal that is suffering. It does not run. It does not bite. It goes still. And something in you wonders, does it know? Does it understand that you mean no harm? Does it feel, in whatever way it can feel, that you are trying to help? That question sounds sentimental. It sounds like the kind of thing you project onto a creature that cannot possibly understand your intentions. But scientists who study animal cognition have spent decades probing exactly this question, and what they have found is far stranger and more precise than you might expect. Wild animals, in certain circumstances, do appear to distinguish between humans who threaten them and humans who help them. Not vaguely, not by accident, with a specificity that requires something, call it recognition, call it categorization, call it something approaching awareness of what a particular human is doing and what that action means for them. Here is where it starts. In 2014, Karen McComb and her colleagues at the University of Sussex published a study in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. They played recordings of human voices to wild African elephant herds in Amboseli National Park in Kenya. The voices came from two groups of people who lived near the elephants. Maasai men, whose culture has historically involved conflict with elephants, and Kamba men, who are primarily farmers and have far less confrontational contact with the herds. The elephants could not see the speakers. They heard only a voice, a single recorded voice, and they responded differently. When they heard a Maasai male voice, the herds moved into defensive formations, clustering around the youngest members, moving away, going alert. When they heard a Kamba male voice, the reaction was far calmer. The elephants were not just reacting to sound. They were decoding who was speaking and what that identity meant for their safety. They had built a mental model of a specific human group and they were applying it in real time. This is not a one-off finding. A 2007 study by Lucy Bates and colleagues in Current Biology showed that the same elephant populations could distinguish Maasai from Kamba individuals by scent alone and by the color of clothing. Maasai-associated cues triggered avoidance. Kamba-associated cues did not. The categorization went deep. It was multisensory and it was retained across time. So before you even get to the question of whether animals recognize helping, you have to sit with this. Wild animals are running continuous threat assessment on every human they encounter. They are sorting you. They are filing you into a category before you have taken 3 steps toward them. The question of whether they recognize help is really the question of whether that filing system is sophisticated enough to include a category called safe, or even a category called this one is trying to help me. There is a species that suggests the answer is yes, and it has been doing this for thousands of years. The greater honeyguide is a small brown bird native to sub-Saharan Africa. It has an extraordinary ability. It can find wild beehives hidden in tree trunks and rock crevices. Cannot, however, break into those hives on its own. For that, it needs a partner. In Mozambique, the Yao people have hunted honey alongside honeyguides for generations. When a Yao honey hunter wants to begin a session, he produces a specific sound. A loud trill followed by a grunt, written phonetically as brrrhm. It is a sound used for nothing else. And the honeyguides have learned it. When a hunter produces that call, nearby honeyguides approach. They lead the hunter through the bush, flying ahead, landing, waiting, flying ahead again. They guide him to a hive he could never find alone. He opens the hive, takes the honey, and the bird gets access to the beeswax and larvae it needs. When Claire Spottiswoode and her colleagues at the University of Cambridge published this research in Science in 2016, they demonstrated something remarkable. The call the hunter uses more than doubles the probability that the bird will cooperate and lead him to a hive. The birds are not just responding to a human presence. They are responding to a specific human signal. They have learned that this particular vocalization means a cooperative partner is ready, and they act on that information. The honeyguide does not have a name for what it is doing. But functionally, what it is doing is recognizing a human as a collaborator and engaging deliberately. On the other side of the world, something almost identical evolved with no cultural exchange between the two groups involved. Off the coast of Laguna, in southern Brazil, wild bottlenose dolphins have developed a partnership with local net fishermen that has been documented for over a century. The dolphins herd schools of mullet fish toward the shore. When the fish are compressed into a dense ball, the dolphins perform a specific dive. a distinctive rolling movement that signals the fishermen to cast their nets at that precise moment. The fishermen have learned to read the dive. The dolphins have learned that this particular group of humans will cast at the right moment if signaled correctly. Research led by Fabio Jorge and Simon Ingram, published in Biology Letters, confirmed that this behavior is not random proximity. The dolphins that cooperate with fishermen are a specific subgroup of the local population. Other dolphins in the same bay do not participate. The cooperating dolphins have individually chosen to engage with humans in this specific, signal-based, mutually beneficial way. They are not domesticated. They receive no training. They have simply learned over generations, through individual choice and apparent cultural transmission within their group, that certain humans can be partners. Now you might ask, is this recognition of help? Or is it just pattern recognition? Is there a difference? Here is where the cognitive science gets difficult and fascinating. For an animal to distinguish a helpful human from a harmful one, it needs to track at minimum two things: the human's identity or category, and the outcome that human's presence has been associated with. That is memory plus association. Most animals with reasonably complex nervous systems can manage that. It is why a dog rescued from an abusive situation may remain fearful of all humans for years. It has generalized a negative association across the category. But the Honeyguide is doing something more. It is not just recognizing a familiar human. It is recognizing a signal produced by an unfamiliar human that carries meaning and acting on that meaning. That requires something closer to understanding communicative intent. It requires the bird to decode. This sound means this human is trying to collaborate with me right now. Julian Kaminsky and colleagues at the Max Planck Institute, as well as researchers at the Duke Canine Cognition Center, have shown that domestic dogs track human communicative intent with surprising sophistication. They follow pointing gestures, they interpret gaze direction, they understand when a human is trying to show them something versus accidentally revealing it. Dogs have been shaped by thousands of years of selection pressure to read human signals. The Honeyguide has not. And yet the Honeyguide reaches a similar functional outcome through a different path. Cultural learning, reinforced across generations of cooperating birds and cooperating humans. So what about the moment of rescue? When a human frees an animal from a trap, or removes a hook from a fish, or untangles a whale from a net, does the animal know? The honest answer is that you cannot know for certain what any animal experiences in a moment of rescue. What you can say is this: animals that have been in distress, restrained, or injured often show measurable physiological and behavioral changes when the restraint is removed by a human acting non-threateningly. Heart rate drops. Struggling stops. In some cases, documented in elephants and dolphins, the animal remains in proximity to the human after the intervention is complete, rather than fleeing immediately as you might expect. Whether that is gratitude in any meaningful sense, whether there is something it is like to be that animal and to feel relieved and aware of who brought that relief, that is a question the science cannot yet answer. What the science can say is that the cognitive hardware for distinguishing between threatening humans and non-threatening ones exists in a wide range of species, that some species have extended that hardware to actively recognize and signal cooperative partners, and that the distinction between help and harm is not invisible to the animals around us. You have been making a category error for most of your life. You have assumed that a wild animal encounters every human as a blur, an undifferentiated threat or a neutral presence. It does not. The elephant that allows you to approach has already run a threat assessment on you. The crow that leaves you gifts on your porch has been tracking your behavior across dozens of interactions and has filed you under something. The Honeyguide that leads a stranger to a hive has read his call and decided he is the kind of human worth working with. The question you started with, do wild animals know when a human is helping them, may be slightly too simple. The more precise question is, do wild animals track what individual humans do to them and for them, and adjust their behavior accordingly? The answer to that question is yes. Which means every time you pass a wild animal without threatening it, every time you stop and let it be, every time you intervene gently in a moment of suffering, you are not going unnoticed. You are being filed. You are being categorized. You are being remembered, in whatever form memory takes in a mind very different from your own. You reach out your hand. The animal goes still. And now you know it is not imagining your intentions. It is reading them.